What about when it comes to expertise and people who, I mean, it is very common in all industries, right? To have people who have done this thing for many, many years and decades. There's this archetype we all have in our heads of the annoying older guy who in the office who just like is a know-it-all and is not open to any of the new ideas of how we can do things because he's like, I've been doing this for 30 years. You listen to me, son. So sort of thing. Curiosity for sure plays a part in this as well. And in terms of how people behave, no?
There's some interesting papers on that actually, on expertise and how they tend to make false claims, how they tend to make completely made up claims, right? So there was this study that looked at, basically the researchers spoke to people who believed they were financial experts.
Okay.
And they came up with like completely made up terms. I think one of the terms was like annualized credit or something like that, like something that doesn't exist. I don't know if that exists. I got no background in finance, right? What they found was people who saw themselves as financial experts would talk about the term, give it context, and add information to it as if it's real. Yeah, which is hilarious. Yeah, and also like quite important to know, I guess, when it comes to talking to experts. In another study, they made a certain group of people feel like they were experts in geography.
Okay.
Yeah, so they gave them geography questions and I suppose they answered it pretty well, and they told them that, you must have a knack for this, so on and so forth.
Made them feel good about
Made them feel good about themselves, to give them a sense of competence, or maybe not expertise, but competence. And then what's interesting next is that they told them, what we're gonna do now is to give you certain places in the US, and some of these places are completely made up, right? So they give them a warning already. Some of these places are completely made up. And when they were given the made up places, they still talked about these places as if they were real.
Whoa.
Yeah. And what the researchers suggested from that finding was that they weren't trying to show off. They legitimately believed they had a competence to talk about this topic. Yeah. The big takeaway here, I guess, is that like expertise can give you a false sense of confidence about the thing that you're talking about. I guess some self-awareness is always good, but you also don't want to let it turn into... You want to have confidence in your competence, right? You want to have confidence in your expertise and your confidence. And you don't want your self-awareness to turn into rumination and have that be an obstacle to your actual performance when you go out and teach, or when you go out and actually lend your expertise to something. Yeah, but it's also good to be aware of like this dark side of expertise, I guess.
Yeah, I think good lesson to kind of draw from that you just shared is it's fine and probably a good thing for you to have confidence in a craft or a science that you've spent decades or many, many years working in. But let's not be closed off to new ideas.
What could be, right?
And to what we don't know and what could be. Because even if you don't glean any like great insights from it today, the couple times a year where you do get kind of hit with something that kind of shakes your worldview, you'll probably benefit from them. It'll probably make you even better at the craft that you're already good at.
Yeah.
I think the second thing that comes to mind is the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? With the second study that you mentioned, I see this all the time. And in fact, I experienced it when I was working in the fitness world for many, many, many years before I got my master's degree. And I really, really did feel because I had trained so many clients, helped people get such good results and all this stuff, that I was an expert. Like, I know how to do this stuff. And then I remember like 3-4 weeks into my master's program being super disillusioned by the whole thing. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Half the stuff that I thought I knew, I don't know anything about. And the other stuff was just wrong. Like in so many contexts, it was just wrong.
That's how I feel whenever I read like any kind of paper or any kind of book. At the end of it, it's kind of like, you know, if this many new things were discovered and if this many new things are still unknown.
Yeah, and I think one of the most important things that I think they did on my master's program back in the day was they brought in a guest lecturer whose name is Dan John.
Oh yeah, Dan John.
Yeah, so he's a bit of like he's a bit of a legend in the strength training and the athletic development world. He's got no formal training in exercise science. And he's worked at a pretty high level with a lot of high-level athletes. He himself was a very successful masters athlete in I think it was shot put and discus and Olympic weightlifting, a few other things. Just someone who really walks the talk.
Yeah.
Who's more than rubbed shoulders with a lot of the top coaching brass in the US and professional sports teams and stuff like that, but no formal education in it. And a lot of the frameworks that he used were things that he just repeated from coaches that coached him.
Right.
And the faculty at the university I went to brought him in to show us that, hey, there's multiple ways to skin this cat of expertise. And just because you're some people here getting like highly educated, because that's what some people feel they need to do, it doesn't mean that you're like the best at doing this. Here's an example of someone who's got a very high level of expertise in terms of getting people ready for sport at the highest levels. He's got no formal training in this. And it's not one or the other. In fact, we should sort of blend them.
I guess it also helps that exercise science is a relatively new field compared to a lot of the other sciences.
And a lot of the research gets done on, let's see what the top guys are doing and let's see if we can make sense of them.
Yeah. I think it'll be much harder for a self-taught chemist, for example, to break into chemistry. You know?
That's true.
Yeah.
But the takeaway for the world that we live in and the coaching stuff that we do, even if it transitions into something that is more advice-based, where people just need like legit plans and schedules and protocols for how to get the improvement that they're seeking. Just because we don't know everything about everything, just because we're not trained medical professionals, doesn't mean you're not good enough to help, right? A lot of times, the expertise that you need to help a person who's over here is just a little bit more experience and a little bit more knowledge than them, right? And if you have the right sort of frameworks in your mind about being responsible with the information that you give to people, and you know, put the right amount of attention into calling out when you don't have the expertise beyond a certain area, and you develop a network of people who you can go to get this expertise. I think that's the edge that you really want to live in, not be completely evidence only led, right? Because that also, it kind of puts constraints on you artificially that don't always apply to a n=1 sort of experiment.
I think the second last part that you mentioned is really important, of understanding what the limits of what your knowledge is, and developing a network of other experts that you can rely on, right? And then refer out when it's necessary. I think that's a really good approach. I think. Yeah.
Look, I'm so sorry, Gene. We're almost out of time. But there's a bunch of stuff that we did want to cover that we're going to have to save for podcast number 2. I did want to say a couple of things, just like on a personal level first.
Okay.
I wanted to thank you as a human being, because a couple of years ago, I went through something really difficult in my life, and I was struggling to keep my shit together. I was struggling to actually find a path that gave my life some structure. And you reached out knowing me decently well what I was going through. And you basically, in so many ways, said, just show up on Fridays at 10 a.m.
Lift weights or talk nonsense.
Yeah, let's lift weights or talk nonsense. And you made it very casual. You made it very unintimidating. And you knew that I was just being a piece of shit in my life and not doing anything. And you just like, come and have this structure. And the truth is, I showed up not because I wanted to show up for myself, but I'm like, I said yes to Jim, I'm just gonna go. And then it became this thing like we've talked about across this whole conversation, right? It became the thing where it started as a process-oriented goal where I was trying to be accountable to you more so than to myself. And then it blossomed into this thing that became an anchor habit that helped me sort of, it acted as a foundation for me to rebuild many other aspects. And, you know, until today, almost 2 years on, we're still doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was, you know, for you, it was just trying to help a friend out at that time.
Yeah.
But it shows how much reaching out a hand like that and helping someone build a habit like that can have ripple effects in a positive way down the road. Right? So thank you for that.
100% my pleasure, man. I think like for those who are not our friends and like don't know what our history is, our history is we go super way back, right? And like you were one of the first people in Singapore to start like a boutique fitness gym, and there was a line that there was an industry that I really wanted to get into at that time, and like you took me on, you mentored me through all those years, right? Like more than 10 years ago, and like this was like a little thing that I could do to return the favor.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, my pleasure.